Well, welcome to Buy the House, Build the Home. We are back and we are so excited. I am going to let Shelby introduce our new guest.
The face. I loved that. Matt is with us. No, your face.
Matt, your face.
Your face.
Already?
Guys, this episode might be just full with laughter, but this is Matt Tilley from TX Success Title. Do you also, through like Fidelity, do you kind of throw both in there?
Do I what?
Do you throw both in there? Fidelity as well?
Yeah, I have to because it confuses people.
Yeah,
So.
understandable. But you're here talking about title today, helping us all understand title a bit more. Also, you're going to be telling lots of stories because I think you are one of the top storytellers I've met in a long time.
He's a man of many jokes.
Yes.
This one.
Oh,
This
Lord.
one.
You'll have to sign waivers, though, first.
So
I'm happy to do that, honestly.
how long have you been in title?
I've been in title for 14 years.
Ooh.
What got you in title?
Do what?
What got you in title?
That's an interesting story. I actually have my real estate license
Okay.
to start with in 2007. Y'all remember 2007? It was not a good year to have a real estate license. And these people kept coming in the office, title people. You know, they come out like cockroaches. And I'm like, who are these people? And they'd always ignore me. And they'd talk to everyone else. I'm like, I guess I'm not important enough to talk to. They're like, that's the title company people. So I started off not liking title company people. So it makes my job difficult sometimes because I'm like, title company. I'm like, oh. And eventually I got to know some of them. And then I realized that they could be a real asset if you got to know them, some of them. And so I had a friend that worked at a title company, and it went from there. Joined up and haven't looked back. So I got to stay in real estate, but still got to help out. And
Yeah.
It's really been cool because no one ever grows up going, I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a doctor. I want to be in title.
I want to work in a title company.
I'm going to do this.
Exactly.
So if you were to break it down for like brand new, someone that doesn't know anything about all of the components of real estate, lender, title company, if you were to just explain to someone, a newbie, what does a title company do? What is the title work that's done?
That's the main question is what is title? So title insurance is not homeowner's insurance. So I'll use an example, purely hypothetical. Let's say you had a estate being sold and there was an heir in prison in Alaska, let's say, that no one knew about. And you buy the house, and 2 years after this person gets released, they say, hey, I had a legal right to that house. It shouldn't have been sold. That issue, let's say that random issue pops up.
Yeah.
When you buy title insurance, you're buying protection for anyone that has a claim, any sort of lien on that property for the life of that property. So you only pay it once, and it'll cover you and legal fees, things like that, for anything that comes up that you may not have known about, that you obviously didn't know about. So we have some crazy things come up every now and then. If you have a really common name, like John Smith, there's a good chance you might have a lien on your house that's meant for another John Smith.
Right.
So we clear that up. We clear all liens and things like that and make sure you have clear title.
Yeah, so you guys essentially go in, you look at the history of the home, the ownership records, and you make sure that there's no additional liens on the property and there's a clean title for the new buyer to assume the property.
Correct.
And
So-
or nobody else has like heirship or rights to the property.
Absolutely.
Or did that seller not pay the roofer who came out and put a brand new roof on the house, and then the roofer therefore submitted there's now a mechanics lien on the property. New buyer goes to buy, and now all of a sudden there's $15,000 associated with this house that the seller needs to pay.
Yeah.
You guys make sure that's all buttoned up. prior.
Absolutely. And those are usually pretty easy ones to catch. And anyone can make a mechanics lien. It's not like...
Could I?
Oh, yeah. You could literally go
would never.
downtown and go, hey, I fixed this sidewalk. I'm putting a $10,000 lien on this house. Absolutely.
People can do that?
Yeah. I probably shouldn't say that. But
Let's not give anyone ideas out there.
If real estate gets real tough.
Yeah. But you don't want to waste people's time. I'm sure there's some sort of penalty for doing a false lien. But yeah, and we sometimes if you do buy investment property, you buy them at the courthouse. So when you buy at the courthouse, you're not going to get title insurance. You kind of do your information. So we sometimes do a run sheet, which is not a full title search, but it'll usually catch some big things. And we had a guy, I've never seen it in my entire life. It was a federal corrections lien. No one bought this property. It was a great deal. The guy ended up, no one's buying it. I'm going to snatch it up. Usually a bad sign. He bought it, found out it's a federal corrections lien. Turns out the previous homeowner had murdered somebody.
Oh my gosh.
They put a federal corrections lien to pay off a civil trial debt.
Oh, wow.
And it stays with that property for 30 years after you purchase it. And this guy had purchased it for a flip.
Oh,
Now, the beautiful thing about real estate is if one thing doesn't work, something else usually works. So he ended up renting it out.
there you go.
Yeah.
You just rent it out for 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh my gosh. There's no way to clear
so
that.
that
then.
one, no. I mean, unless you want to pay it.
Yeah.
I mean, once you sell it, you're paying for it. So another question is, if I roll into this, is it required to have title insurance?
Yeah.
And the answer is no. If you get a loan,
Yes.
the lender's going to require one.
Yeah.
But if you pay cash, no, you don't need title insurance. But it's probably not a great idea because
Yeah.
if something does happen, you're completely on your own.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things they don't require when you pay cash.
This
You don't have
is
to get an
for
appraisal.
sure.
You don't have to get title insurance, and that's if you know what you're doing, okay. But sometimes people
Sometimes
don't,
the
and
protections
then would
are
end
nice.
up in a situation like that, and that
Exactly.
can be really
Yeah.
detrimental.
One thing I tell realtors is when you have the contract and it says, talking about the survey, and it says will be amended to read, will not be amended to read. It's talking about coverage.
Additional
that's-
coverage for the survey.
Exactly. First of all, I work for a title company. When you add that additional coverage, the title company is going to make more money. It's minuscule amount of
Yeah.
money. I mean, it's a teeny little bit more, like $18. I don't know what it
Yeah.
is. Depends on the price of the house. But what that does is, and I'll use a real life example. There was a home in Fort Worth that sold, and they didn't choose that coverage. Let's say that's your client. They ask you, should I take this additional coverage? And the way they word it is so confusing. I wish they
Yeah.
could make it
Yeah.
where someone like myself could understand it. You want to be safer or less protected?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take safer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the cost of it is 5% of the premium, not the sales price.
Of the title policy.
So
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So if you like $100,000 house, the premiums are like 833 somewhere around there dollars.
Right.
So it's 5% of that.
Yeah.
Is that worth it? To me, absolutely. So this person didn't want to pay. It was a $1 million+ house. So it was a little bit more expensive. They didn't get the extra coverage, and turns out there was an old sewer line that ran under the backyard, under their pool, cabana, all that. City of Fort Worth decides they're going to get rid of it.
Oh.
They go in and tear up the pool.
Oh, they did. And that was all on that homeowner to replace and fix. Now, if that's my house and you're my realtor, and I come back and say, hey, why didn't you have me fill out this?
Right.
Well, that was your choice. Well, now I'm going to sue you. Now I'm going to sue the title company. I'm going to sue
Right.
everybody.
Yeah.
And this has actually happened. So whenever I talk to realtors, I say, always
Let's say
suggest that they,
will
Yeah.
be amended.
and if they don't,
Yeah.
have them sign something to say, I suggested, but they chose not to because, I mean, it rarely comes into play, but when
Yeah.
it does,
Then it does.
it's bad.
Yeah.
So titles insurance isn't sexy, cool, business, but when you need it, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So
Oh
I will
my
say
gosh.
it really matters having a good title company on your side in a real estate transaction. A lot of times you just kind of go with what the seller's agent has listed as their title company. And I've had some horror stories of the title company missing things. And there was one where I represented the buyer and it was not ever disclosed. It was not on the listing. It wasn't anywhere that there was an HOA.
oh yeah.
And they caught it like right before closing. But I've also have other companies that they'll really dig in. They are
Yeah.
on your side. They're working with you. You can call their attorney and ask questions. They're like, hey, just so you know, we reviewed the survey, and there's a utility easement right here that's 10 feet off. So if your buyer is wanting to build a pool, they probably, like that, just kind of go over and above. It's really important to have a good title company that's taking good care of clearing the title for the property, and also helping explain, like, this is what this means.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a huge part of it. It's the surveys and stuff. I mean, when I had my license, I didn't know any of that stuff, and I didn't realize how much info the title company had and how many questions I could have asked.
Yeah.
Until now, I work for a title, and now I know, God, there's so much that we could do and help out with if just people knew and weren't scared to ask.
Yeah.
I tell people, call me anytime, and if you ever have any questions, but nobody. They're, I don't want to bother you. I'm married
Bother
with
me.
kids. I'm not doing anything. I'm at home. I love them to death. If they ever
Sometimes
see
the
this.
phone call is a nice little break.
I had someone call me for special provisions. Now, I'm not an attorney, so
Yeah.
I can't do that. But I called one of our attorneys, and I'm sorry. I didn't call them because it was kind of late on Saturday, and I didn't want them to have to feel obligated to do something at 10 o'clock, whatever. So I sent an email, and she responded like 15 minutes later. She's kind of like me. She's
Yeah.
at home, too.
Yeah.
And did send in the special provisions, and they just
Yeah.
put it right in there.
Yeah.
And it's a
Nice.
huge deal.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's important. And I've had, that's kind of good segue into the next question. I'm sorry if I'm taking your questions from you. But
No, you get to answer them. Ask the questions and answer them, Matt.
I'm doing it all today. Who pays for title insurance? So we've had people that, like you said, they're representing the buyer. And it's weird because it's for the buyer's benefit, but the seller
Typically.
generally paying. It's a weird deal, but the seller's also the one that usually has the money to pay, and the buyer's, trying to come out of pocket and
Right.
make this deal happen. So no one really questions it. So sometimes the buyer wants to choose their title company, and then the seller will make them pay for it. It's always great when you're a title company and someone does that for you, but at the same time, if you're in, a multiple offer situation, you don't
Yeah.
want to ever
Yeah.
have someone put you on there and lose a deal because that's another thing you changed. But some people, they'll only close with certain title companies because you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you pay the title policy, it's regulated by Texas Department of Insurance. So no matter what title company you choose, there's a title company that just uses notaries. They don't have a brick and mortar office, which is great. You want someone to close at 7-Eleven or whatever. I mean, we could do that too. But
Yeah.
point being, you're paying the full whatever the policy amount is.
Yeah.
No matter where you close. The only difference is maybe escrow fee. You could discount that or something like that. But
Yeah.
no matter where you close, it's
The fees are relatively
title
the same.
policy's always going to be the same.
You're just
Yeah.
getting a different set of human beings who are helping you throughout the
Yeah.
transaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to tell realtors on the listing side, if you're going to be selling, a lot of times I'll come to you guys and I'll be like, let's go ahead and open title, because especially if I know it's a scenario where maybe there was a divorce
Oh, yeah.
or a death. I did one where the husband passed away. Husband had been married previously and had 4 kids, and they were all over.
Yep.
One of them was in Mexico. Some of them were in like Colorado.
Was one of them in prison in
No,
Alaska?
nobody was in prison in Alaska.
I think we closed that one.
No, but honestly, just getting the heirship affidavits and getting everyone to sign.
Takes
and
time.
it gets really nasty, especially when there's death, because a lot of greed can come out when people pass away and you've got like family tension. And so if you can go ahead and get title going even before you have it listed, it can really help the process in a lot smoother way. And I just did one last week we closed. That was an all cash deal. And I went ahead and reached out to the title company. I'm like, can you go ahead and open title, because we're trying to close fast.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they can turn those cash deals around really quickly. But I went ahead and reached out and she was like, oh yeah, let me get on it. And sure enough, there was HOA stuff, and you've always got other like hats in the other cooks in the kitchen. And so it's really helpful if you're on the listing side, and then you can tell the agent, just so you know, I already opened title
Yeah.
with this company. So
That's a
then,
blessing and a curse.
Yeah,
Title company.
it's
So you're
like,
great if you're
hey,
on or
yeah.
you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Most of the time, if you're the listing agent and you tell the buyer
It goes
side,
well.
we already opened title with this company, they're going to say, hey, let's go with that.
Yeah.
That's actually a great point. I mean, really, not a lot of people do that. And I try to tell people we can open up title early. It doesn't cost us anything to do that. I mean, if it's just a regular listing, everything seems pretty good and it's super busy. Generally, there's not a need to, but just like you said, divorce or death or something like
Yeah.
that, there might be some issues. Huge.
Because
If we open that up, and especially if it's a cash deal and you're want to fast close, and then it's like,
you got to get
oh.
Johnny out in Mexico.
Yeah.
Literally, they had a mobile notary come meet at the border. They met at
Oh
the
my
border, and we
gosh.
have to get him. We're making sure he has his ID. I mean, it was like a whole crazy thing.
Yeah.
And they all
Yep.
have to sign off on the airship affidavit. Otherwise, you have a situation where this comes back later,
Yeah.
and you don't have title insurance. And
Yeah.
then what are you going to do? This person has claim to the home.
yeah, if you
It's-
hadn't started that process early,
Right.
It would have
that could've
held
killed
up
the deal.
the-
But you were on top
Absolutely
of it
could
and
have
did it
killed the
early.
deal.
Yeah.
What's funny is the very first house I ever bought, it was an off-market property, and the lady had passed away, and she had several children, and so I went under contract knowing we probably weren't going to be able to close in 30 days, and that thing got pushed out for like 6 months
Oh my
because of the
goodness.
kids and argument and getting these things signed off. And I didn't have to move, so I was like totally fine and just kind of let it ride. And I was getting it for a minuscule amount of money. But it was one of those things like if I was a buyer that had a lease ending or like needed to move into the property,
You would have had to.
It would have completely killed the deal
Yeah.
for me. And the title company was doing everything they could. I mean, honestly, it wasn't on them at all. But it was a very interesting process to realize, like, there's a lot of moving parts here, especially when there are situations like death or divorce or
Yeah.
specifically death, I feel like is one of the hardest ones to combat. And then you're trying to track down people. And sometimes they're estranged. Like, they don't speak to each other
Oh,
anymore. And it's
it's
like,
always.
how do we find Johnny?
Yeah.
Where's your brother? And then
I'm
I
telling
don't
you.
know. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
we haven't
crazy.
spoke since '87. I'm like,
Yeah. So
and then you're like, we all want the same thing, but nobody wants to do it because they're like, I'm gonna throw a wrench in the plans because I'm mad. I'm like,
and then all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe let
Yeah.
my realtor see if we can get more for the house. And it becomes this money grab thing. And it's like, oh my goodness. But it is important to get it opened up and let them start their side of it. It's a whole world that I don't think buyers or even a lot of realtors, it's not our job, but it is our job to make sure that we're informing our clients of all the steps that are taken.
Yeah.
And like a
And
lender's
how
important.
important it is.
Yes, the lender is a very important player. The appraiser is an important player. The title company is an important player. There's so many different pieces that have to make this all come together to work.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, we just, Matt, Katie, and I had lunch, I don't know, a week or two ago. And I was in the midst of a deal where we were having a bit of like HOA difficulty because the HOA decided in the middle of summer, when it's the busiest time for real estate, to switch management companies. And the new company coming in was essentially like, oh, we're not going to have the new information that you guys need to be able to get the resale certificate and go to closing for at least another 30 days. And I remember when I got that email, I was like, no, like unacceptable.
We will find a way.
Yeah, I was like, this is not going to happen because my sellers were wanting to buy and they were contingent. And so I'm like, there's dominoes here. And so we got it all handled, but I saw what a role title played in that because Katie, who was helping us at the time, really went to bat. And then she was kind of guiding us, me as the realtor, but also the sellers as owners to be like, okay, HOA president, like, talk to them, call it to the management
Get
company
Tina
directly.
on the line.
No, literally. I was like, call.
a lot of times we'll have some
start
contact
fires.
info to be able to help with that.
Yeah.
But that,
And-
I believe they have 10 business days. I don't think they can just willy-nilly take their time like that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like this management company coming in, so I'm glad my sellers are moving out of the neighborhood, honestly, is just kind of a mess. They actually posted everybody's like late dues and fines and fees in a public place. And they were like, oops, didn't mean to do that. So sorry.
I didn't mean to sue you, but
Yeah.
looky there.
So it's like, oh my gosh. But I do remember at lunch that you had a great HOA story. And I'm going to need you to relay that if you can.
That
Here.
one's acceptable.
Story time with Matt.
Yes.
That one's all right.
It got me.
No one was injured, luckily.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, we were trying to get the resale cert to close. I believe it was a cash deal. It was a quick close, and it was around the holidays. It was 2 days before Christmas. And they were MIA.
Yeah.
And I lived in the neighborhood, so I was like, I'll just go by the house and talk to the president, because we had the president and his address. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
know exactly where that is. So it was, it was December, so it got dark early.
Oh my gosh.
So I pull up at his house, and it's like midnight dark.
Yeah. Yeah.
At like 5:30. And I pull up, and I could see him in their little window eating dinner. I'm like, oh, I feel bad, but we're trying to close.
Yeah.
So I knock on the door, and he opens the door. I'm on the business end of his 45, and gun in my face. I'm like,
I'm sorry, what?
I felt like,
He had a gun?
yeah, I felt like, oh God, what's that movie?
Home Alone?
Ace Ventura.
Oh.
I'm looking for Ray Finkel. I was like, excuse me, like, are you the HOA president? What do you need? I'm like, I'm trying to tell you if you could just lower your weapon.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm like,
You went over and above, man. That's
yeah.
Yeah.
The next time I'm
Life
talking
at
to a
risk.
realtor, I'm gonna be like, this is what we do.
Yeah.
For you.
this is what we do here. We
guns
knock
in my
on
face.
doors. We trespass.
For you, like Jerry Maguire. It's a never-ending siege that I will never fully tell you about. So
God.
he said that he was busy at dinner. Can't you see I'm at dinner with my family? And I'm like, and I'm not.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. If you could just do your job, it's a piece of paper. Let's just get her done. And so it wasn't that day, but the next day we did get.
Christmas Eve. There we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
It was a Christmas Eve miracle, so we got it done. So
Wow.
yeah, but
That's wild.
So HOAs are great.
Oh my god.
yeah, so we have a lot of experience with dealing
Mr.
with HOAs.
President.
Oh my God. Can you even
We
imagine?
need a Christmas miracle.
Yeah, we're like, it's no big deal.
Oh my gosh. That is insane.
Yeah, so next time I talk to that client, I was like, just so you know, if you go to a different title company, they're probably not going to do that for you.
I have made sacrifices.
Would you say that you deal overall in your industry, are the people that you're dealing with, like in all the research you have to do, all of the HOA presidents, are people pretty reasonable? Or are you dealing with some,
For the HOA folks?
I'm not talking just HOA. I know you guys deal with surveyors and some of that's just coordinating, but like, would you say overall, are people pretty reasonable or pretty not?
I would say so.
Okay.
Usually, I mean, you're all working for the same thing. You would
Same
hope that
end
most
goal.
people would be, most people would be reasonable. But every now and then, and some people kind of make a name for themselves. No matter what their business, there are some that stand out. So when you get a contract and you see that person on there,
You're like, oh, okay.
like, this is going to be a tough one.
Great.
So we get prepared. As far as as far as
I just see you guys being like,
I mean,
suit up.
We
Let's
get
go.
prepared.
it's go time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna need some caffeine and some Valium at the same time. It's you just prepare. You can't help who's on the contract, but
Right.
if we refer appraisers or lenders or things like that, we make sure that they're people they're really good. I will say that on my personal deal, I don't know if I should throw them out there. I mean, they're a big company, so I will throw them out there.
Okay.
USAA, who I've been with forever, and I love. They were the people buying my house. They were the lender, and I'm also the title. So I'm involved, and then I'm also
Right.
the
Yeah.
third party. And I made an offer contingent on the sale of this house, my house, and the realtor on the house that I was buying said, "Hey, we got an offer." I didn't know this till later. I became, a little bit more informed in all of real estate.
Yeah.
They cannot get an offer. They cannot kick you out with an offer. It has to be accepted.
Executed.
Thank you. Executed offer, not just an offer.
Yeah.
Me, I was like, oh no, I didn't bother asking. This is years ago, by the way.
I feel like this is how we all learn, though. You know, to a
Yeah.
certain
It's the
extent.
greatest learning
It
experience.
happens, and then you're like, wait.
You make
We
one
are.
mistake,
Yeah.
you'll never make it again. It's a
right.
good education. So I'm like, yeah, oh, we'll drop it. And then we had to close, obviously, by a specific date. And it wasn't happening. It wasn't going to happen.
So you dropped your contingency
and they
because
coulda,
you
I
thought you
mean,
were getting kicked out, even though you didn't have an exit.
Exactly.
They didn't have an
They
execute
could have
offer.
sued me. Obviously, kept the earnest money. I mean, they could have done anything.
my.
Luckily, they extended kind of after the fact, which we should have just restarted, but we didn't. And I told USA, I'm like, I'm not talking to you as a title company person. We're third party. But as a member of USA, I'm very, very unhappy.
Yeah.
And I usually recommend people, and I will not now. I was very upset.
Yeah.
Now that was a long time ago,
yeah.
and they maybe, but I still have them for all my other insurance.
Yeah.
So they're a great company. I'm just saying that if you're working or someone that's your buyer's using a lender, and you're like, I don't really know them.
Yeah.
They don't understand that a lender's super important.
Oh,
it's
my
not
gosh,
just,
yes.
hey, I got the best rate.
No.
Well,
No.
Yeah.
They're and if they're in a different time zone, we've had things mess up because the wire cutoffs at 4 and they're in a different time zone. They already went home.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not funny. We've had people be in U-Hauls and literally for the weekend, they're homeless.
Yeah.
Because it didn't fun. And that's what I love about where I work is and it's not even our fault,
Yeah.
but if something like that happens, and I'm probably should put that out there, but we took care of them so that
Yeah.
they had a place to live over the weekend. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
even though it wasn't our fault, because
You went over and above.
Yeah.
you do the right thing. If you treat people the right way, it comes
Yes.
back.
Yeah.
And I've seen
Yes.
realtors do the same thing. They're not making any money, or they're making very little money, but
Yeah.
this person needs help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was talking to someone. Was it you last week or somebody that we had lunch and I was talking about? Maybe it wasn't you.
It could have been. Keep talking. We'll figure it out.
That helped this older lady. She needed help, and they did it basically for free.
It was
And-
not me. I probably would do something like that, but that was not me.
Exactly. And then
Yeah.
it turns out she had 5 adult kids, and they all used
Aw.
Shriller. So she ended
Yeah.
up, doing very well.
Yeah.
But just
Yeah.
because she did the right thing.
I have story after story of, I've had some where I've lost money, take my commission way down. I've done things like
I
that.
mean, you just did that on a recent deal where
did.
you had to take your commission
Went
down to almost
way
nothing.
down. And
Yeah.
the thing is, though, it does come back around. And I had one guy that, he was looking in the really low price point in Dallas, was so hard. And other agents were like, why are you wasting your time? You're not even, and he ends up, referring me to his uncle and sending me so it does always come back around to you. Another tip I will say for realtors, though, do not, if you're in a situation where they're going to be in a U-Haul, like you were saying, don't schedule your closing for a Friday. Schedule your closing for a Wednesday or Thursday, because just in case there is a situation where the lender's got the earlier cutoff, I'm always looking for those things.
Yeah.
And trying to schedule a closing on a Friday. If you are in a situation where there's not a lease back, they don't have somewhere to go, and something happens, you got to be prepared. So it's
Just
better
another
to kind of
thoughtful touch.
yes,
in
it's
the
just better to
transaction.
think through that at the beginning and go, so what's your situation? Okay, well, we're not going to cut it down to the wire, but it's good to know that if you did, the title company's going to step in and
That's
help
huge.
take care of you.
You're so far ahead of the game. I'm just amazed I had a license. When I hear you talk, I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. I just wanted to close. I'm like, I need, Daddy needs to pay
I'm
the
sure
mortgage.
that's also come from experience, though,
Yeah.
and seeing that come down to the wire, and you learn it's the same
Yeah.
thing. That you've learned in title. And
Yeah,
things like that.
it's like today, it's Friday. It's the last business day of the month.
Yeah.
So we're slammed.
Yeah.
If anything goes wrong,
Yeah.
it could put it off. So I believe it's FHA. there's the interest for the month. If it goes over just 1 or 2 days into the next month, that's a full month of interest.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
it's not just,
Yeah. There's monetary.
not just a problem, but
Yeah.
it creates a big issue.
Right.
And we've had people that's happened to as well. So that's a great point. Having your closing date, couple of days, little room to play right there.
Also, if someone is planning on, let's say they're breaking their lease early and they're like, we're kind of early in this process, and you have a close date of the end of the month or the beginning of the month, if you move it to the first day of the month or the second day of the month, then it skips a mortgage and it goes. So let's say you're closing on October 1st, you don't have to pay your first mortgage till December 1st. But if you close on September 30th, you pay it on November 1st. And so sometimes it's a good tool for buyers as well if they do have a lease agreement and they're trying to get out of it early. Even if we're just pushing closing by like 3 or 4 days, it helps them on the back end. Mentally, they're still paying for it, right?
But it alleviates now.
It alleviates the like, I'm going to have to pay 2 mortgages this month, or a mortgage plus a rent payment this month. And if you have people that can help you do that, and that makes it a little easier on title too if you're moving it to the earlier part of the earlier part of the month. So I try to think through things like that too for people, because it's just something you don't think of and people don't know. They think I close and then on the 1st I have to pay my mortgage, and that's not the case.
Yeah.
No, I love that. Do you have any other tips off the top of your head for people walking through title, or maybe even realtors, that hey, this would actually be very beneficial to title and to your clients if you kind of went in this manner? Kind of some of the things that you're even mentioning. But is there anything else that you can think of?
I think I go back to that extra coverage because I've seen so many issues arise out of that, and it gets real nasty when people lose some money or something pops up.
Yeah.
And why wasn't I informed? Like on the we have exclusions on the title policy, so that's stuff that's not going to be covered, like mineral rights, things like that, easements, anything like that. And they don't understand. We had somebody, a client that had a house, and the house was built over an easement, and they're like, why would they come in and put an easement under the house? Like, no, they built the house over the easement. And now, it was 1959.
Yeah.
So now it's an issue, but it's most likely they're not going to come tear your house down or anything. But it's important for you to know, or your client to know, that is not going to be covered. So when I had my license, I didn't know anything about the title commitment.
Yeah.
And it was, shame on me. But
That's
knowing
a lot to learn.
what needs to be clear, what's going to stay on there, what's covered, just how it works. Y'all know way more than I ever knew. And I think most realtors don't know much about the title policy.
Until an issue comes up, and then you find out really quick. I had one that it was not in an active HOA, but an HOA had been formed, so it was inactive. And I had to kind of warn them. They have plans for the house. They really didn't want a house with an HOA. And the other agent's like, well, it's inactive. And I'm like, okay, let me do some research here, because it could be reinstated very easily. And then I heard horror stories of neighbors get in a fight. They're wanting to build a back house in the back for their, mother-in-law. Neighbors get in a fight. That neighbor goes in and reinstates
the
HOA. And the HOA specifically has the bylaws that state no additional dwelling units.
Yeah.
So that can happen. And just hearing an agent go, oh, it's inactive, it doesn't matter, And same thing to your point, we built a house over an easement. And I have had those deals where, okay, the house has been there since 1975. The odds of anything happening is extremely slim. And if you love the house and think about the amount of time you're going to spend in the house, it's probably okay. But you do probably want to have that extra coverage. You want to be having those conversations with them. And if it's a risk they're willing to take,
Yeah.
my clients were able to just go, you know what? We're willing to take the risk that some crazy neighbor isn't going to go reinstate an HOA. And if
Yeah.
it does, we'll deal with the repercussions of our decision.
Yep.
But you definitely need to make sure that you're communicating those things to the best of your ability and understanding title. You know, when you get the documents, it's just so much. And it's like Schedule B, Schedule C. I'm like, what am I looking at here? And it is a lot. And it's really great to have people that are going to dig in and will point out things. That's something I love about TX Success. You guys will point out, Katie will be like, just so you know, this is on here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Highlight a potential
Right.
issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing about that we have going on that is huge is fraud. So we've had these hackers. They're getting really good.
Yeah.
So they'll take, say, one of our closers' emails. They'll hack into it. So you might get an email from Katie or whomever,
Yeah.
and it's all looks exactly the same, and they'll know we have number like GF numbers, so we know files and
Yeah.
things like that. They'll know all that information. So I could tell you every single thing about your deal, the closing, the loan amount, everything, and you'll be like, all right, this is obviously,
Yeah.
and it's coming from the same, and they'll change like one number on the cell phone or something crazy.
Yeah.
So now, whenever we're, if there's ever a funding change, a change of rounding number, bank account, anything like that, we have to do that by phone.
Yep.
Yeah.
At minimum, never
Yeah.
in writing, because I think there was a Fidelity in Dallas, it's $1 million, and they were just watching the back and forth on this deal all transaction long, and when it came down to funding, hey, Betty, my client decided they want to put it in their business checking account. So here's that number and here's the routing number. Same email, everything's.
Yeah.
And they did that $1 million. And as soon as it hits, it's
It's gone.
99.9% of the time,
Yeah.
you'll never see it again.
That
I
is terrifying.
I was actually working for someone a couple of years that happened to, not $1 million, but I think it was about $150,000 that is gone, that they couldn't recover. And it was one of those situations where they impersonated with the email, and both parties were like, what happened? Because they had even talked earlier that day on the phone, like kind of all the correct procedures.
Yep.
And he's been in real estate for a long time, commercial and residential. And so he's very averse, to what he's doing. And he was just in utter shock that could happen. And he was like, what? Because he even called, and they sat there and letter by letter, and one of the letters was off on the email. So I've witnessed it, and just the grieving that happened in
Yeah.
that moment. I mean, $150,000 is a lot of money, and for a lot of people that would be devastating. For him, it was a huge frustration,
Yeah.
and he'll figure out how to recoup it. But I'm like, oy.
Yeah, wire fraud is a huge problem. I tell my clients, I'm like, call the title company. I also think that's why it's important to go in person. Obviously, we haven't moved over to not being in person for closings. And I think people love this digital world, and it's like, oh, I don't want to make a call. Who's calling these days? I just want to, and it's like, no, you could lose hundreds of thousands of
Yeah.
dollars because you're lazy and you don't want to take the time to make a phone call.
Yeah.
And you're talking, I mean, I've heard so many horrible stories, people losing their earnest money, losing one guy, he almost did it. He was gonna, I think it was like an extra $12,000, not insignificant amount of money.
No.
And for him, it would have been, I mean, you save up this money
Right.
so that you can do these things. And they caught it, but man, you have to be careful. That's why I'm always like, they'll come to me as the agent. Betty, are we doing this right? I'm like, call the title
Yeah.
company. This is important. You need to make sure that you're getting your funds to the right account.
I'm like
From
that
that
with
account.
$25 on Venmo to someone. I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
calling them. I'm
It's
like, are
for
you
you.
sure? Is this your picture?
Or last
Like,
four
yeah.
your number. I'm
Yeah.
not sure this is
Yeah.
right.
I'm like,
We had a guy, a closer, like 3 weeks ago. It was $500,000, and they talked about it on Friday about where to put the money, the rounding number, all that stuff. And then on Sunday, he gets an email from the guy saying, "Hey, this is the check account I want to deposit." And he's like, that's weird because we
Yeah.
just talked on Friday, and he just said, "Okay," and then on Monday he called, said, "Hey, did you send an email to me yesterday changing the routing number?" He's absolutely not.
We would never do that.
Nope.
Yeah. They don't go changing their routing numbers or their account numbers. Nobody's doing that.
Yeah.
So
No.
if you get
yeah.
notified, that is a
That's
red
it.
flag.
Big red flag. Be like,
Do not ever accept a change of a routing number or a
Via
checking
email.
account or an email, account number.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about why would you just gotta,
Yeah.
think about it. and,
Follow your gut.
We're
Yeah.
required to check everything twice now. Like, you get the okay, and then we go back, and usually we have something from the beginning that shows their routing number,
Yeah.
where they want that money deposited, and we have to have two sets of eyes check it every time.
Yeah.
And the good news is, if Matt can figure out who you are, he will show up at your door.
Is that the good news?
He's gonna knock and be like, "Listen,
So BPOs, when I was trying to figure out what the acronym BPO, broker price opinion.
Yes. Oh,
When I had my license, I'd go to when homes were getting foreclosed on, you go take pictures of it. You have to take the front, the side, the address, something like that. Do pretty much a market analysis on it and come up with how much it's worth, give it to the bank. And back in the day, 2009, you could do like 12 of those a day.
Yeah.
yeah."
And then they always tell you, and we'll give you the listing. Not once out of 1,000 I did that. But, so I go travel around, take pictures. Well, these people would know that you're taking pictures because it's going to
Yeah.
foreclosure. So they
Yeah.
know like you're with the bank or something like that. So I have numerous times that I've had guns pulled on me. So I'm like, I'm going to just start parking away and then kind of sneak by and take pictures. So I'm going to this house. It was ironically Gun Barrel City.
Oh my gosh.
Middle of nowhere. And I'm driving out there and the road, my GPS just went black. It's like, you are no longer on planet
don't know
Earth.
where
It's
you
just-
are.
Yeah. It's like, this road doesn't exist. It looks like I'm off-roading through a lake. And I'm trying to find like 122 Elm Street, whatever it was. Road keeps going and just getting kind of narrower and narrower, and I'm like, all of a sudden I'm on private property, and I'm like, this is not good. And I look in the house, and it's 122 Elm Street. It's the one that I
There
need
you
to take
are.
pictures of, and I'm clearly trespassing, which is a no-no. And so I'm about to go take the picture. It's like a horror movie, and all of a sudden someone bangs on my window, and it's a dude with a shotgun.
Oh my gosh.
You have
and
more
he's-
stories with guns in them
Oh,
than
I-
I've ever.
I got 1,000 at least, and they all involve someone pulling a gun on me. And I'm like, and I put down the window, "Hello, sir," and he's like, "Well, are you with the bank?" I'm like, "Absolutely not."
I'm just trying to get a broker
I'm
price
not with the
opinion
bank.
for you.
I'm like, and I knew his address was 122 Main Street.
Yeah.
I said, "I'm looking for 126 Main Street or Elm Street or whatever I said." He's like, "Well, that's down there." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm supposed to take pictures. Can I just take pictures of your house and just tell him it's that house?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." So I'm taking pictures. And then the most embarrassing part is it's trees and a barn. So he has to help me back out of there for like 2 minutes to get out. I felt terrible, but
Wow.
I'm like, I'm
Hey,
actually.
but you got the pictures.
You made it
Yes.
out
You
alive.
did it.
I
You
didn't
made
get
it
shot
out
in the
alive,
face,
Matt.
which is a positive. That was the last BPO I did.
There you
And I'm
go.
like, I should
it
get a
was time
title.
for you to pivot to something else.
Yeah, in Thailand, I've only had one gun pulled on me.
Oh my gosh.
Okay,
So,
we have like 5 minutes tops. I want your best title story that you can share
Not involving
in
guns
a public
being pulled on you.
space.
yikes. Well, that's probably the
I feel like the good
mob
stories.
boss.
Then I'm gonna need you to tell that because that story rocked my world.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that was quite as bad as that. So maybe the full body cast was really awkward. So I'm a notary.
Yes.
So if you need not a buyer, there's too much paperwork. But if you had a seller that needed closing, and they're like in rehab in a full body cast, I would go do that.
Okay.
So usually that's not how I like to do it. I like to just do normal closings. But I had a certain closer. I'm not going to mention her name. She'd always send me on the worst place. I had one guy that was out of jail for trying to kill his wife.
Yeah.
and she sent me to his house to close him because she didn't want to go, obviously. So she told me right before I walk in the door, by the way, he's got an ankle monitor because he's out on bail for murder, attempted murder. I'm like,
oh my God.
of course he is. Yeah, sign, initial, stamp. So she sent me to go close a guy, and it was actually the realtor that called me and said, hey, before you go in there, it was a commercial deal. He goes, and I'm going to his office. He's like, before you go in there, just be sure to, remain calm. And I'm like, why do you tell me this? He's like, he's going to offer you espresso. You will drink it.
Oh.
Drink every bit of it. And I'm like, what is going on? He goes, when you first walk in, there's going to be a guy reading a newspaper. He's like, this guy's connected. I'm like, what? Like Goodfellas? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh. And I'm like, in the parking lot, about to go into this warehouse. And I'm like, if I don't return in 45 minutes, call the police. He's like, I will, buddy. Good luck. I go inside. I walk inside, look. There's a guy reading a paper. It's like these dimly lit fluorescent lights blinking. I'm walking down a hallway. The lady takes me back to his office. He's like, would you like an espresso? I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I'd love one. I hate espresso.
I'd love one.
And it
Give
takes,
me 3.
Yeah, delicious. It takes him 10 minutes to make it. And I'm just sitting there, and he's got a map of Italy on the wall in there. I'm like, this is just, I'm being set up. I'm like, oh, Italy, beautiful. He's like, you've been to Italy? Oh. George Clooney has a place there, Lake Como, beautiful. And he's just like, so we're just waiting for this thing to finally, he brings it over in this teeny little cup. And I'm just, this is delightful. And it's just taking forever to sign this thing. And I'm just dying. I just want to get out of there. So we get out there, and it's a warehouse just filled with all these boxes. I have no idea what this guy's business is. I'm like, it's a front for something. I don't want to be here. We close on the deal. He's like, I got some other deal. I'll be sending y'all. I'm like, and the first time in my life, I said, I don't even care. I mean, I didn't say that. I'm thinking,
Right.
feel free to close somewhere else.
Internally,
You can
you're
go
like,
to another title company.
Yes, if your life's in danger.
We support other businesses.
Exactly. I got a great title company I know of. So I go out to the car, and I'm still in the parking lot, and I call him. I'm like, oh, my God, I'm still alive. Don't call the cops. He's like, I figured you'd be all right. I'm like, what? What does this guy do? He's like, he sells espresso makers.
Oh, my
All those boxes were
gosh.
espresso. That's why he wanted me to have an espresso, because it's like,
it's his business, not the mob. Not the mob.
not the mob.
Oh, my God.
Not the mob. And I'm like, you are, anyway.
But then you were all hyped up on caffeine.
I know. I'm like, that was the best espresso ever.
Give me 10.
But yeah,
That
so
story got me.
that was
That's
so
great.
like I said, we go above and beyond.
We go into warehouses potentially thinking we might not come
Might
out.
not make it out. Yeah.
Well,
Wow.
Matt, I think we might have to have you on for another episode.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
like stories with Matt. I
Story
think that's what
time
we
with
should
Matt.
call it.
It'd have to
Yeah.
be a
It
late night
doesn't-
episode.
Sure, we can do that.
Honestly,
Let's
I
go.
got a couple stories.
love it.
But
If
I'd love
anyone,
to share.
if anyone wants to get in contact with you, say it's even a realtor or somebody that's more interested in title, things like that, how do they find you?
My cell number is the best way.
Okay.
817-688-1547.
Okay.
My email's so long. Plus I'm always on my phone, so
Okay.
Perfect.
that's the best way.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Well,
We'll
thank
put
you
it-
so much for being on. We really appreciate you.
Well, thank y'all for having me.
Yeah.
It's never boring, you know?
No, it's not.
Yeah. At least not in Matt's world.
No.
That's for sure.
I really pray that you're all right, you know?
Yeah.
With all
Well, I
these
still have to get
ghost
home, so
stories.
I'll probably have another story before I get home. So
It'll be for our late night edition of By the House.
hopefully not.
Yeah. Late night edition.
Hopefully that'll be a daytime one. I don't want any
Oh
bad
my
stories.
gosh. Well, thank you again. It's been
Thank
great.
you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.